The silent dawn. The vast emptiness of space stretched before the observation deck of Earth's most ambitious military project to date. Captain Elena Morrison stood motionless, her reflection barely visible in the reinforced transparent aluminum, as she watched the final preparations for humanity's newest defender. The HSS Nemesis hung in its construction cradle, its obsidian hull absorbing nearly all light that touched it, making the massive vessel seem like a tear in the fabric of space itself. "Beautiful, isn't she?" The soft voice belonged to Dr. Maya Santos, the lead scientist behind Project Nightmare. The small woman joined Elena at the viewport, her eyes reflecting the same mixture of pride and apprehension that Elena felt. Though I suppose beautiful isn't quite the right word for a ship designed to weaponize fear itself. Elena nodded slowly, her mind wandering to the classified briefings that had brought her to this moment. The Nemesis wasn't built to fire conventional weapons. It housed something far more devastating. Deep within its core lay the culmination of decades of research into human consciousness and quantum mechanics. The Nightmare Engine. "Status report," Elena asked, though she knew Maya wouldn't be here unless everything was ready. "Final calibrations are complete," Maya confirmed, her tablet displaying a cascade of green status indicators. "The quantum consciousness matrices are stable, and the psionic amplifiers are operating within expected parameters." "She's ready, Captain." Elena turned to face her friend and chief scientist. "And you're certain about the ethical constraints? Once we activate the Nightmare Engine, the fail-safes are hard-coded into the system," Maya assured her. "The fear projections can't cause permanent psychological damage. They'll experience their worst fears, yes, but only long enough to force a retreat. No lasting trauma." The ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Morrison to the bridge. First shift crew reporting for duty. Elena straightened her midnight blue uniform, its silver insignia catching the light. Time to introduce the crew to their new home. The bridge of the Nemesis was unlike any other in Earth's fleet. Instead of the traditional command center layout, it was arranged in a circle, with crew stations forming a perfect ring around a central platform. The design wasn't aesthetic. It was necessary for the precise psychological synchronization required to operate the Nightmare Engine. As Elena stepped onto the command platform, she felt the subtle hum of the ship's systems through the deck plates. Her crew, handpicked for their unique combination of military excellence and psychological resilience, watched her with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena began, her voice carrying easily in the hushed bridge, "welcome to humanity's answer to a galaxy that thought we would be easy prey. 3 years ago, the Krath Imperium attacked our colonies, believing we would fold before their superior numbers. 2 years ago, the Vrol Dominion tested our borders, expecting us to bow to their technological superiority. Both learned that humanity doesn't break easily." She gestured to the holographic display showing the Nemesis's unique systems. "But we've paid for each victory in blood. Too much blood. That ends today." The Nemesis represents a new approach to warfare. Instead of matching our enemies ship for ship, weapon for weapon, we'll make them face something far more primitive and powerful: their own fears. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the ship's tactical officer, raised her hand. "Captain, about the rumors. Is it true the Nightmare Engine can actually read alien minds?" "Not exactly," Maya answered, stepping forward. "The engine creates a quantum field that interfaces with the consciousness of sentient beings. It doesn't read thoughts. It projects carefully calibrated waveforms that trigger the fear response in virtually any known nervous system. The more aggressive the target's intentions, the more powerful the response. In other words," Elena added, "the harder they come at us, the more terrified they'll be. Our job isn't to destroy our enemies, but to make them destroy themselves. Fear is universal. Every species that evolved to survive has it. We're just weaponizing it." Commander David Chen, Elena's XO, spoke up from his station. "And our first mission?" Elena's expression hardened. "Long-range sensors have detected a Vrol battle fleet assembling near the Arcturus colony. Intelligence suggests they're planning another push into human space. We're going to convince them that's a very, very bad idea." The bridge crew exchanged looks, some excited, others apprehensive. They had all volunteered for this assignment, but the reality of what they were about to attempt was finally sinking in. "I know what you're thinking," Elena continued. "This isn't how you were trained to fight. But remember, every major advancement in warfare seemed strange at first. The first armies to use gunpowder were called cowards. The first submarines were called dishonorable. We're not here to fight fair. We're here to protect humanity with minimal casualties on both sides." Maya stepped forward again, her dark eyes intense. "There's something else you need to understand. The Nightmare engine requires perfect synchronization between ship and crew. Your own fears, your own doubts, they'll be amplified and projected along with the engine's output. That's why you were all chosen not just for your skills, but for your psychological stability. In 6 hours, we begin our shakedown cruise," Elena concluded. "I suggest you all get familiar with your stations. What we're attempting has never been done before. If it works, we'll change the face of warfare forever. If it doesn't..." She let the thought hang unfinished. As the crew dispersed to their stations, Elena felt the weight of command settle more heavily on her shoulders. The Nemesis represented humanity's most ambitious gambit, turning the primal power of fear itself into a weapon. But as she watched her crew prepare for their mission, another, deeper fear gnawed at her consciousness. What happens to the human soul when you make terror your ally? The next 6 hours would begin to answer that question, one way or another. Echoes of fear. The alert klaxons aboard the Nemesis shattered the artificial night of gamma shift. Captain Elena Morrison was on the bridge within minutes, her uniform hastily donned but impeccable. The holographic tactical display already showed the situation. A massive Vrol battle fleet had just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus system. "Talk to me," Elena commanded, taking her position at the center of the circular bridge. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across her tactical console. 37 Vrol warships, Captain. Standard attack formation. They're moving faster than expected. 18 minutes until weapon range. Commander David Chen looked up from his station. "They're not even trying to hide their approach. This is a show of force." "They're confident," Elena agreed, studying the tactical display. The Vrol ships moved with precise coordination, their crystalline hulls catching the light of Arcturus's twin suns. "Too confident. Dr. Santos, status of the Nightmare engine." Maya's voice came through clear on the bridge speakers. "Quantum matrices are aligned. Fear response calibrations are loaded for Vrol physiology. But Captain, there's something odd about their neural patterns." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Define odd." "The Vrol process fear differently than humans," Maya explained. "Their crystalline technology isn't just external, it's part of their nervous system. They experience reality through a kind of crystalline filter." The implications hit Elena hard. Can the engine still affect them? Yes, but not in the way we expected. Their fear responses are structured, geometric. We'll need to adjust our approach. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Elena used the time to study the enemy fleet's movements. The Vrol were notorious for their belief in technological superiority, viewing organic life as inherently flawed. Their ships, like their bodies, incorporated living crystal technology that they claimed made them perfect beings. "Enemy fleet entering effective range," Chen reported. "They're charging weapons." Elena took a deep breath. Initialized the Nightmare engine. Full spectrum projection. The familiar hum of the quantum matrices deepened as the Nemesis' unique weapon system activated. On the tactical display, Elena watched as the fear field expanded outward, reaching for the approaching Vrol ships. What happened next wasn't what anyone expected. The lead Vrol vessels suddenly accelerated, their crystalline hulls pulsing with energy. Rather than retreat from the fear being projected into their minds, they pressed forward with even greater determination. "This isn't right," Maya's voice was tight with concern. They're not just resistant. They're using the fear patterns somehow. The crystalline structures in their brains are refracting them. Alina's mind raced. The Nemesis' entire strategy was based on the assumption that no sentient being would continue fighting when faced with overwhelming terror. But the Vrol's unique biology was turning that assumption on its head. They're launching fighters, Chen announced. Multiple attack vectors. The space between the fleets erupted with energy weapons fire. The Vrol fighters moved in perfect geometric patterns, their formations reminiscent of crystallises. Each shot was precisely calculated, testing the Nemesis' defenses. Shield holding, Commander Chen reported. But they're adapting their attack patterns faster than our projections can update. Elena watched as the massive alien fleet began to split apart, executing maneuvers that seemed to anticipate the Nemesis' defensive capabilities. Somehow, they were using the ship's own fear projections to enhance their combat effectiveness rather than being deterred by them. Dr. Santos, Elena called out, "We need options. They're turning our own weapon against us." Maya's response was immediate. "The crystals, Captain, they're using the fear as a focusing mechanism. The more terror we project, the more precise their responses become. But maybe we can use that." "Explain." "Their crystalline neural networks are designed to create perfect order from chaos. What if we give them too much order? Overload their ability to process it?" Elena understood immediately. Instead of projecting fear, project perfect geometric patterns. Overwhelm their need for structure. "Exactly," Maya confirmed. "Every crystal has a resonance frequency. If we can find theirs, do it." The nightmare engine's hum changed pitch as Maya recalibrated its output. Instead of projecting terror, it began broadcasting perfectly ordered mathematical patterns, each more complex than the last. The effect on the Vrol fleet was immediate and dramatic. Their precise formations began to waver as their crystalline processors struggled to integrate the overwhelming flood of order. Ships that had been executing perfect attack runs suddenly found themselves out of position, their carefully planned maneuvers disrupted by the competing patterns flooding their neural networks. "It's working," Chen reported, unable to keep the amazement from her voice. "Their formations are breaking down. They can't maintain tactical coherence." Elena watched as the mighty Vrol fleet began to fragment, their legendary coordination shattered by an attack they never expected. Not fear, but an overdose of the very perfection they sought. "Enemy vessels are powering down weapons," Chen announced. They're retreating, Captain." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the Vrol fleet withdrew, their retreat just as chaotic as their attack had been. But Elena felt no triumph in the victory. The Nemesis' first real combat test had revealed both its greatest strength and a potentially fatal weakness. Their assumptions about how different species would react to fear were dangerously wrong. "Dr. Santos," she said quietly, "I think we need to completely rethink our approach. The galaxy just got a lot more complicated." Maya's hologram appeared on the bridge, her expression thoughtful. "Agreed, Captain. But we've learned something invaluable. It's not just about understanding fear. It's about understanding consciousness itself. Each species we encounter will process reality in their own unique way." As the last Vrol ship disappeared into hyperspace, Elena couldn't help but wonder what other surprises awaited them. The Nemesis had been built to end wars before they began, but instead it had opened up an entirely new frontier of conflict, one where the battlefield existed in the mind as much as in reality. The Coalition, Dr. Maya Santos' laboratory aboard the Nemesis, had transformed into a maze of holographic displays, each showing different species' neural response patterns. 3 weeks had passed since the encounter with the Vrol, and the ship's mission had evolved far beyond its original purpose. "Look at this," Maya said, gesturing to Captain Elena Morrison, at a particularly complex pattern floating in the air. "The Meridians process fear through a distributed network consciousness. They don't experience it individually. It ripples through their entire collective. Elena studied the intricate web of neural connections. How does that affect our approach? It means we can't target individual ships, Maya explained. We either affect their entire fleet or none of them. But there's more. She pulled up another display. The Shektar, on the other hand, experience fear as a physical manifestation. Their bodies literally crystallize it into energy. Commander Chen frowned from his position near the door. And the Vrol use it as a focusing mechanism through their crystal tech. 3 species, 3 completely different ways of processing fear. Their discussion was interrupted by a priority alert from the bridge. Captain to the bridge immediately. Multiple hyperspatial signatures detected. The 3 officers rushed to their stations, finding the bridge already humming with activity. Lieutenant Chen's hands flew over her tactical console, mapping the emerging threat. 3 distinct fleet signatures, she reported, her voice tight. Vrol, Meridian, and Shektar configurations. They're converging on our location from different vectors. Elena took her command chair, mind racing. Time to weapons range. 47 minutes. They've formed a coalition, Commander Chen said, stating the obvious. They're working together to neutralize our advantage. Maya's hands danced across her console. Not exactly working together. Look at their formations. Each fleet is maintaining significant distance from the others. They're allies of convenience, nothing more. Elena saw the opportunity immediately. Then we use that. Doctor, can we modify the fear projections for each fleet individually? Yes, but it'll put enormous strain on the nightmare engine. We've never attempted to generate multiple distinct fear fields simultaneously. Do it, Elena ordered. Position the Nemesis at the center point between the 3 fleets. Let's make them react to us. The next half hour was a blur of activity as Maya and her team reconfigured the Nemesis's systems. The nightmare engine's hum rose to a fever pitch as it prepared to generate 3 distinct fear fields, each tailored to the neural architecture of a different species. Quantum matrices at 95%, Maya reported. Fear field generators aligned and ready on your order, Captain. Elena studied the approaching fleets. The Vrol ships moved in their characteristic crystal lattice patterns. The Meridian vessels pulsed with bioorganic energy, their ships seeming to breathe in unison. The Shektar fleet crawled through space like metallic insects, their ships constantly shifting configuration. All hands, this is the captain, she announced shipwide. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. Trust your training, trust each other, and trust in human ingenuity. The Nemesis's systems surged with power as 3 distinct fear fields expanded outward. Each was carefully tuned to interact with its target fleet in a unique way. For the Vrol, whose crystal tech thrived on structure, the field projected chaos and entropy. The Meridians received a fear signal that disrupted their collective consciousness, making coordination impossible. The Shektar experienced their own energy weapons turned back against them in their minds. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Vrol fleet's perfect formations began to crumble as their crystal processors failed to compensate for the projected chaos. The Meridian ships started moving erratically, their collective consciousness fragmenting under the strain. The Shektar vessels actually began to physically transform, their adaptive technology responding to fears that weren't real. But something unexpected was happening. The 3 fear fields were beginning to interact with each other, creating interference patterns that nobody had predicted. Energy spike in the nightmare engine, Maya shouted. The fields are resonating. Elena watched in horror as the 3 fear fields merged and twisted, creating a feedback loop that amplified each species' terror response. The Vrol ships began firing randomly, their precision lost to chaos. The Meridian fleet's collective consciousness shattered completely, reducing them to primitive fight-or-flight responses. The Shektar vessels continued to transform uncontrollably, some literally tearing themselves apart. Shut it down, Elena ordered. Cut power to the engine now. But it was too late. The feedback loop had become self-sustaining, feeding on the terror it was creating. The bridge crew watched helplessly as the three enemy fleets descended into absolute chaos. Then, through the madness, a single transmission cut through on all frequencies. It came from the Meridian flagship, but the voice that spoke was different from anything they'd encountered before. It seemed to be speaking for all three species at once. "We understand now," the voice said, its tone a strange mixture of fear and revelation. "Your weapon. It doesn't just project fear. It forces understanding. We see each other's terror, feel each other's pain. We must not continue." One by one, the ships of all three fleets began powering down their weapons. The Vrol crystal ships dimmed, their energy patterns shifting to peaceful configurations. The Meridian vessels pulsed slowly, their collective consciousness reforming but fundamentally changed. The Shektar ships settled into their base forms, their transformative rage subsiding. "They're retreating," Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice barely a whisper. "All of them." Elena sat back in her command chair, the weight of what had just happened settling over her. The Nemesis had been meant to end wars through fear, but it had just done something far more profound. It had forced three hostile species to understand each other's terror, their own mortality, their shared vulnerability. "Dr. Santos," she said quietly, "I don't think we built a weapon at all. We built a bridge between minds." Maya nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the retreating fleets. "The question is, Captain, are we ready for what that means? Understanding goes both ways. They've seen our fears too." As the enemy fleets disappeared into hyperspace, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Nemesis had changed the rules of warfare, but perhaps not in the way anyone had expected. They had set out to weaponize fear, but instead they had created something that might just force the galaxy to confront its shared humanity, even among those who weren't human at all. Paradigm shift. The quiet hum of the Nemesis's engines did little to calm Captain Elena Morrison's nerves as she stared at the latest sensor data. The ship had been docked at Arcturus Station for the past week, undergoing extensive modifications after the unprecedented three-way engagement. But it wasn't the technical upgrades that kept her awake during ship's night. It was the implications of what they'd discovered. "You've seen the analysis?" Dr. Maya Santos asked, entering Elena's ready room with a steaming cup of coffee in each hand. She passed one to the captain before settling into a chair. Elena nodded, gesturing to the holographic display floating above her desk. The Nightmare engine didn't just project fear during that battle. It created a temporary psychic link between three completely different species. "We're not looking at a weapon anymore, are we?" "No," Maya agreed, her dark eyes intense. "We're looking at the first true xenological communication device." The fear response was just a carrier wave. The real breakthrough was the consciousness bridge it created. Before Elena could respond, the ship's AI chimed in. "Captain, priority message from Fleet Command. Admiral Chen requests immediate communication." The Admiral's hologram materialized in the ready room moments later, his expression grave. "Captain Morrison, Dr. Santos, I assume you've reviewed the data from your last engagement." "Yes, sir," Elena responded. "We're still processing the implications." "As are we all," Chen said, "but we may not have much time. Long-range sensors have detected something unprecedented. A combined fleet of Vrol, Meridian, and Shektar vessels is approaching Earth, but they're not in attack formation." Maya leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "They're maintaining perfect geometric spacing between their ships, but the formation itself, it's like nothing we've seen before. They're arranged in what our xenolinguists are calling a conversation circle, and they're broadcasting on all frequencies in all three of their languages simultaneously." Elena felt her pulse quicken. "What are they saying?" "That's the thing," Chen replied. "They're requesting a dialogue, not with our political leaders or military command, but specifically with the Nemesis and her crew. They say you're the only ones who can truly understand." The implications hit Elena like a physical force. The consciousness bridge, It didn't just show them each other's fears. It showed them a way to truly communicate. Exactly, Maya interjected, her scientific enthusiasm breaking through. The fear response created neural pathways that shouldn't have been possible. Different species, different brain structures, different ways of processing reality. But for a moment, they all understood each other perfectly. Admiral Chen's hologram flickered slightly. The Joint Chiefs are divided. Some see this as an opportunity for real peace. Others suspect it's an elaborate trap. Captain Morrison, you've faced these species in combat. You've seen inside their minds in a way no human ever has before. What's your assessment? Elena stood, walking to the viewport that showed the gleaming expanse of Arcturus Station. Sir, when we first launched the Nemesis, we thought we were creating the ultimate weapon. Something that could end wars before they began by weaponizing fear itself. But what we actually created was something far more powerful, a bridge between minds that don't just think differently, but experience reality itself differently. She turned back to face the Admiral. The Vrol see the universe through living crystal, turning chaos into perfect geometric order. The Meridians experience everything as a collective, sharing every thought and feeling across their entire species. The Shektar physically transform their bodies and ships in response to their emotions. They're so alien to us, and to each other, that meaningful communication should be impossible. But the Nightmare Engine showed them, showed all of us, that consciousness itself transcends these differences. That's not an assessment, Captain, Chen pointed out. That's philosophy. No, sir, Elena disagreed. It's both. The Nemesis was built to be a weapon of fear, but it's evolved into something else, a tool for understanding. And I believe these species are coming to us now not because they fear us, but because they finally understand us. And maybe, just maybe, we can finally understand them too. Maya's fingers danced across her tablet. The modifications we've been making to the Nightmare Engine. With a few adjustments, we could potentially create a stable consciousness bridge. Not just the temporary connection from combat, but a sustained dialogue. And if it's a trap? Chen asked. Then we'll still have the original fear projection capabilities, Elena answered. But sir, I don't think it is. What we witnessed in that battle, the way they all retreated once they truly understood each other, it wasn't just fear, it was revelation. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, considering. Finally, he nodded. Very well. The Nemesis will rendezvous with the alien fleet at these coordinates. He transmitted a set of coordinates far enough from Earth to be safe, but close enough to respond if things went wrong. But Captain, if this is a trap, we'll be ready, Elena assured him. But sir, I think we're about to witness something unprecedented in human history. The first true communication between radically different forms of consciousness. After the Admiral's hologram faded, Elena turned to Maya. How long to reconfigure the engine for sustained consciousness bridging? 12 hours, Maya replied. But Elena, we need to consider the implications. If we can maintain a stable bridge between different species' consciousness, it changes everything. Elena finished. War, diplomacy, trade, cultural exchange. Everything we thought we knew about interstellar relations becomes obsolete. The question is, are we ready for that kind of change? Maya smiled, her expression both excited and apprehensive. I don't think anyone's ever ready for paradigm shifts. They just happen, and we adapt or we don't. But if any ship and crew can handle this, it's the Nemesis. Elena looked out at the stars, wondering what the future would hold. They had set out to create the ultimate weapon. But instead, they might have just invented the ultimate tool for peace. The real question was, what would they do with this power now that they had it? The next 12 hours would begin to answer that question, one way or another. Beyond terror. The combined alien fleet hung in space like a work of abstract art. Vrol crystal ships gleamed in precise geometric patterns, their faceted surfaces reflecting starlight in mesmerizing ways. Meridian biosynthetic vessels pulsed with internal energy, their organic hulls shifting in perfect synchronization. The insectoid Shektar ships completed the formation, their adaptive forms arranged in a complex spiral that seemed to defy conventional space combat doctrine. Captain Alina Morrison stood at the center of the Nemesis's circular bridge, acutely aware that this moment would likely be recorded in history books, assuming it didn't end in disaster. Final diagnostic complete. Dr. Maya Santos reported from her station. The modified Nightmare engine is stable. Instead of projecting fear, it's ready to establish a sustained consciousness bridge. Elena nodded, her throat dry. Status of the alien fleet. Maintaining their position. Lieutenant Chen answered. Still broadcasting on all frequencies. The translation matrix is having trouble keeping up. They're communicating in some kind of hybrid language that combines all three of their native tongues. They're already starting to integrate, Maya observed, wonder in her voice. The temporary bridge we created during the battle must have left lasting neural pathways. They're learning to think as one. Commander David Chen spoke up from his station. That could be dangerous. 3 aggressive species with a hive mind. Not a hive mind, Maya corrected. Something new. Individual consciousness remained intact, but with the ability to truly understand each other's perspective. And now they want to include us in that understanding. Elena took a deep breath. Open a channel to the alien fleet. The main view screen flickered to life, showing 3 distinct beings. A crystalline roll, its faceted body refracting light in complex patterns. A meridian, its form fluid and barely contained within conventional space. And a Shektar, its biomechanical body shifting between different configurations as it spoke. We greet you, Nemesis, they said in perfect unison, their voices overlapping in a haunting harmony. You who showed us the way beyond fear. Elena stepped forward. I am Captain Alina Morrison. We are prepared to establish a consciousness bridge for peaceful dialogue. More than dialogue, the role aspect said, its crystal features catching the light. More than peace, the meridian aspect added, its form rippling with emotion. More than understanding, the Shektar finished, its body settling into a configuration that somehow conveyed both strength and vulnerability. We offer evolution, they said together. Maya's console suddenly lit up with alerts. Captain, they're transmitting something. It's not an attack pattern, but... The alien fleet began to move, their ships rearranging themselves into a new formation that defied description. It wasn't geometric like the Vrol, organic like the Meridians, or adaptive like the Shektar. It was something entirely new, a pattern that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes could process. They're creating a resonance field, Maya reported, her fingers flying over her controls. It's amplifying the consciousness bridge effect exponentially. If we activate the engine now, we'll be connected not just to their minds, but to a new form of consciousness they've created together. Elena finished, understanding dawning. That's what they want to show us. Not just how they think individually, but what they've become together. Commander Chen's hand moved toward the tactical controls. Captain, this could be a trap. If they found a way to weaponize the consciousness bridge. No, Elena said firmly. They've moved beyond that. Just like we have. She turned to Maya. Activate the modified engine. Full power. The Nemesis's systems hummed to life, but this time there was no undertone of threat, no weaponized fear waiting to be unleashed. Instead, the ship seemed to sing, its quantum matrices reaching out to touch minds that were once alien, but now sought to be understood. The consciousness bridge formed, and Elena gasped as understanding flooded her mind. She saw the universe through crystal lattices that turned chaos into perfect order. She felt the joy of shared thought across countless minds working as one. She experienced the freedom of a body that could become anything it imagined. But more than that, she saw what these 3 species had created together. A new way of experiencing reality itself, one that transcended their individual limitations and created something greater than the sum of its parts. Through the bridge, the alien consciousness spoke directly into her mind. This is what your weapon of fear showed us was possible. Not just understanding between different minds, but the ability to create new forms of consciousness itself. Will you join us in this evolution? Elena felt her crew's reactions through the bridge. Their fear, their wonder, their hope. The Nemesis had been built to end wars through terror, but it had instead opened a door to something far more profound. The next step in the evolution of consciousness itself. We accept, Elena said, both aloud and through the bridge. Not as conquerors or conquered, not in fear or dominance, but as equals seeking to become something more together. The alien fleet's strange formation seemed to pulse with joy, and through the consciousness bridge, Elena felt the barriers between species begin to dissolve. Not into a hive mind that erased individuality, but into a network of understanding that preserved what made each species unique while allowing them to share in each other's strengths. As the Nemesis crew adjusted to this new form of existence, Elena realized that they had achieved something far greater than their original mission. They had set out to weaponize fear, but instead they had discovered how to weaponize understanding itself. The ship that had been built to strike terror into the hearts of humanity's enemies had instead become a bridge to a future where fear itself became obsolete, replaced by a kind of understanding that transcended the very concept of conflict. As the consciousness bridge stabilized, Elena felt the truth of it all. This wasn't the end of the story, but rather the beginning of a new chapter in the evolution of all sentient life. The Nemesis, conceived in humanity's darkest fears, had led them instead to their brightest possible future. And somewhere in the quantum matrices of the ship's consciousness bridge, the last echoes of fear transformed into the first notes of a symphony of understanding that would reshape the galaxy itself.